leave the stage to you. Have a wonderful time.
Thank you. And again, thank you, NAREDCO, for partnering with JLL for this real estate forum. I've already briefly mentioned how the residential sector, especially Mumbai, in the last 2.5 years has been growing phenomenally and promises to make a record year in 2024 in terms of total volume sales. But everything that goes up also comes down. I'm not giving a negative turn to it, but it's a cyclic business. So we thought, why not put together a session which will focus beyond residential? What are the opportunities available to developers to focus on beyond residential? And just 2-3 points to mention. We all know India is already moving up the ranks in terms of GDP and the fastest growing country in terms of economic growth. And this is said to be there at least for the next foreseeable future. With that, there's also a big social and consumer economy getting created. And millennials and the new age population which is coming up, they also value quality service. With that thought, I thought it's good to invite a very fresh perspective of asset classes in this case. So I'd like to start with Mr. Jay Challa. Jay, firstly, congratulations. Curated Living, which is one of the largest student housing operator on campus, has signed its first working women hostel in Juhu as of yesterday, 325 beds. So Jay, my point to you is, please talk about your company and give enlightenment. And also mention, how do you see student housing as an opportunity for Mumbai developers to focus on, and your operating models?
Thank you, Karan. Thank you, NAREDCO, for giving us the opportunity here. Good afternoon, everybody. And I would also like to thank you, Mumbai and JLL, for giving us an opportunity to make an entry. We made an official entry yesterday and also inaugurated our first student housing private accommodation facility at Ville Parle in Juhu. And maybe one of the most premium student accommodations that you would see in this country, at least. Coming to your question, Karan, under alternative housing, I think student housing and co-living is something that is extremely important for all the developers as well as the investors to look at. I would say we, as Curated Living, we are in a hybrid space. We do develop our own properties and operate. We also lease and operate. What happens when you do development and operate is that you get to design and you get to improve the efficiencies of returns if you're able to design to your specific customer, specific market, specific price point that you want to do. If you're leasing a space, you end up doing a lot of things, you force fit a lot of things, so there is a bit of a challenge in terms of giving you the ideal returns. But of course, the traditional challenge is that if you're doing an asset light, you can grow faster, you can go quicker. But if you're doing asset heavy, then your growth is stagnant to some extent because it takes a lot of time for development. We have chosen a hybrid model where we are 100% confident, where we have a client who's underwriting the asset. We go on an asset heavy basis, either on an acquisition or development. And also the markets where we want to make our presence felt and brand penetration is also important. We go on an asset light model. We've been in this business for the last 5 years, and I'm happy to say that it is no more a concept stage or a proof of concept stage. There is enough of numbers that are available for ratification, and I can confidently say that we are at par, if not equal, to a commercial real estate development in terms of yield and other returns that are expected either by a developer or by an investor in this.
Thank you for that. For the audience knowledge, as on date today, we have a deficit of 7 million beds for students who are willing to pay but not able to find very professionally run opportunities or hostels to look at. And what's intriguing is, fast forward 10 years, that number will stand at almost 70 million. So it's a big market to capture, and student housing is actually a very nascent, it's not nascent because it's been 5 years since you've mentioned. Let me rope in another angle. We're seeing, Mr. Suresh, Bombay is witnessing the best ever infrastructure development the city has ever witnessed since independence. Fast forward 2 to 3 years, it will be a ultra modern world city, which will obviously attract the migrant population even more than what we are seeing today. And not everybody can afford to buy residential when they start off fresh in the career. What is your perspective on rental housing and co-living?
Thank you, JLL. Thank you, NAREDCO, for having me here. The founder and CEO of CoLive. My name is Suresh Angarajan. It goes back to 30 years. I started my career in Mumbai, and I would not have come from a smaller town to Mumbai if Citibank had not offered me a chamri. So chamri is an evolution of a rental housing which has been there for several centuries in the country. Even the British soldiers were moved and posted in India saying that they will be offered chamri, and it was based on various choices that they had. Right. So rental housing is very, very important. We talked about creating new cities. Prime Minister always has this vision about creating new cities. New cities cannot develop because nobody arrives in the aeroplane, gets down at the airport or at the bus stand and starts looking for a house to buy. They first settle down with a rental housing, and all of us have gone through this evolution. We are not saying that people will stop buying. It is just that the age for buying is 35 to 55, and 18 to 35 and 55 and beyond, people will choose rental housing is the thesis. This is the macro thesis, and it's playing out in various cities already. There was also a discussion about, Mumbai losing out on tech talent. Don't worry, you have enough of media talent with so much of OTT happening. Everybody in the industry here wants to come and live in Andheri, Lokhandwala, and there is no housing for them. So, rental housing is a must if the entertainment industry has to go up, the media industry has to go up. So real estate will play a very, very significant part. And, Karan and me were talking offline about how the evolution has happened in so many other things. Like first, your commercial real estate. I started again my career with Sakar Bhavan, Bakhtawar, non-fire compliant buildings, staircases which are very, very tiny. But now today we only talk about grade A commercial, and I'm sure Brickfield and Blackstone and Bain will underwrite that commercial has seen that kind of an evolution. Movie theaters have seen that kind of an evolution. And every walk of life has seen that kind of an evolution in our generation, and we believe that housing will go through that evolution. People will take pride about where they are living, and for that, good rental housing backed by institutional capital is a must. And we play that significant role of being an operator and building the bridge. So I hope I've answered your question on why Mumbai and why it's important to have rental housing.
If you could educate the audience on the models, the way they could actually partner.
Yeah, I think everybody is looking at yields at this point in time. I think there's a lot of, in this day and age, post 2000, people have made a lot of money, whether in real estate or IT sectors or, several sectors. And they want to create asset yielding, rental yielding assets for their next generation. And it's very important. So whether it's a family office, whether it's a large institution, I think rental yielding asset is very, very important. So I think multiple models that we work with, of course, there is an operator model like a hotel coming in with a brand and its SOPs. But we are not wary of buying assets as well. We'll be shortly announcing a largish JV for a PropCo, where it'll be an asset-heavy model. So I think it is the first one off the block, which is going to take time. But I think by 2030, you will see at least 3 or 4 large institutionally backed co-living student housing operators in the country. And mark my words for that, because I've seen the journey in the last 5 years, survived COVID, flourished extremely well after that. And I can see that 2030 is going to be like a mega rental housing boom with multiple operating models evolving there.
Thanks, Suresh. Now let me bring in another asset class, senior living. For audience's knowledge, today India is about 1.4 billion population, and we have 10% of the total population in the senior age category. Fast forward to 2050, estimated population will be 1.7 billion, but we'll have 20% of that population as in the senior age category. So Adarsh, with that, I'd like to invite, because you are a pioneer in senior care, and would like the audience to understand your models and your growth story and how you see this market, also Mumbai in particular.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let's see if I can get your attention outside the phone towards the six of us. How many of you here love your parents? Yeah, show of hands.
Only half the crowd.
Okay, so can I reasonably estimate that most of you love your parents? Okay. How many of you have the opportunity to live with them? Yeah. So a large number of you are not able to live with your parents, right? Would you do anything in your power to make sure they're well taken care of? Yeah? So is ensuring your parents' safety an emotion for most of you? For example, I'm guessing a lot of you here have kids, right? So whenever you had your child and you were picking a hospital for the birth of your child, was the question you asked the hospital, how much does it cost to deliver a baby? No? Yes? What was the question? Yeah? You want the best facility, you want the best care because you're like, this is my child, right? So taking care of parents is a similar emotion in India. And that's what we're essentially doing, right? We're bringing emotion into the decision-making matrix of real estate. Because if you go and buy a property today, you're using the right side of your brain to make a decision. Okay, good developer, good location, I will make some money if I put in some money today. But you're not, or there's this fancy swimming pool or fancy clubhouse, right? This is what we all sell. But if you bring in elder care into that mix, and you had a project that has, say, a tower for elders, wherein if a family walks in, you can say, hey, you know what, the parents and in-laws can live here. They get to be independent. They get to enjoy the company of like-minded people. And then you guys can live here, and your kids and them can hang out together, and everybody gets their own space. I think then we're catering to an emotion, right? So essentially, that's what we're doing. We tie up within larger communities to make the home buying process an emotion instead of a logic, right? And fundamentally, let me again try to throw in a few questions. Would you guys know what is the #1 reason for reduced mortality in elders? Anybody? Why do you think elders, say, die faster? No? Come on, guys. Yeah? No? Heart disease, diabetes. So actually the answer is loneliness, right? And what do you think is the second one, since we're on this topic? So the second one is falling down, right? So communities like ours essentially create a place where people can be meaningfully engaged. Their healthcare is taken care of in advance as opposed to being reactive and waiting for things to go wrong. And the whole philosophy is how can we improve quality of life and reduce the process of aging, right? That's what essentially senior living is. The care and the operations are what gives the increase in the real estate price. So if people are kept happy on the ground, the price of the property goes up. So typically we would sell at a 20-30% markup. Answering the last part of your question, Karan, Bombay is the melting pot of culture. So Bombay has people who have moved in here forever, but increasingly it's hard to live in the city and manage yourself, right? We all get confused about how we have been conditioned to think of parents. We have all been taught to be reverent to our parents, but we have never been taught to make them relevant, right? So if you go and ask your parent, what do you guys want? They'll say, I want to be independent, I don't want to depend on you. But we are of this assumption that we should be there for our parents and they should depend on us, right? So these are, some of the things that we answer as a company. And Bombay is a large market. I think JLL has put the estimate at 4 lakh units across the metros. So I think Bombay is easily 75,000 units for elder care is easily possible here.
Thanks for the insights. Ashank, let me bring you in. Brookfield globally has investments in multifamily, rental housing, and it's been there for long. And from that perspective, how are you looking at India for this particular opportunity from a capital provider angle? And your own assessment on what will India need to do to actually attract that capital also on a fast track mode?
Okay, thanks for having me, and we'll make sure to get you guys out for lunch as soon as possible. So I'll take a book from, a page from Adarsh's book. How many over here, and this is a risky question in a NAREDCO conference, but how many people here own a home? How many people, so more than half don't own a home here, by the way. So how many people own a home and rent a home? Now, in India, apparently, more than 1/3 of the population is renting a home. In this room, more than 50 to 60% of the population is renting a home. And it's a very unorganized, fragmented sector. Now, the rental sector, from a housing standpoint in the US, just as a data point, it's a $5 trillion sector. India is a $3 trillion economy today, going to a $5 trillion economy and hopefully a $10 trillion economy in the next decade or so. But rental housing is a small fraction in terms of what the economy stands for on an organized basis. And that really is the opportunity in an urbanizing India. And when I say rental housing, I'm taking all the different segments in it, right? Student housing, senior housing, multifamily, single family. It's a very large sector and a very important sector for the economy. So something that I believe will require a lot of capital and organization. In the US, again, just comparing a market that has reached its peak in terms of organizing the housing sector. We have over 35,000 units that we manage and own. We have 170 senior housing communities in Australia. If I take the senior population in India, you mentioned 140 million people. That's larger than the senior population of US, UK, Canada, Australia, all combined. And we don't have an organized sector that we can necessarily say that the institutional capital is, really pouring into this space. So when I think about cycles, when I think about housing, it's the residential for sale, and I'm sure most of you in the room, whoever has done development and has owned a home, you would have seen the price appreciation that has happened in real estate itself. Now imagine as a developer, if you were able to hold on to that inventory and go through the rental model and actually take advantage of that price appreciation. So that's where our private capital comes in, of being more patient and being able to create a strategy around where we can cater to the new India and the old India and cater towards different life cycles of the customer, whether it's starting at school when they're 18 and looking for student housing, whether they're in the young professional lives and looking for co-living or multifamily as they progress in life. And then you have the residential for sale as the person progresses to be able to take a mortgage and actually buy an apartment. And then you have senior living, which will take, again, various forms and shapes from assisted living to independent living to adult housing. So I think the sector is very large, and it's time that we are able to organize ourselves around it with capital, but also regulation.
Interesting insights. Thanks, Ashank. Mr. Ajay, coming to you, we earlier heard, which was a positive news from the Chief Secretary of Housing Department from Maharashtra, that they're rolling out draft policy for rental housing, student housing, working women, hostels. From a lawyer's perspective, what kind of incentives or policy changes would you like to see in that draft, or would recommend to the government to fast track these kind of developments and make it more lucrative?
Thank you, Karan. Thank you for having me here. As regards the current policies which have been implemented, what we heard this morning was it's too new. One will have to go through all those policies to decide as to what are the changes required. But more generally, I heard everyone here saying there's a shortage of co-living space, there's a shortage of student housing or rental housing. If we want to meet that demand, each one of them would want an adequate return on the investment that they make, for which land will have to be available at a reasonable price. I think today in the country we have enough laws, enough policies, enough legislations in place. What is actually required is stringent implementation of the same and expeditious implementation of the same. The delays that are caused in implementation of the existing laws, be it encroachment of land, be it disputes that are going on, which does not reach the end because of delays in implementation. I think if we are able to tackle that part of the entire thing, everything should fall in place.
Interesting. Now let me wear the developer's hat. And as a developer, there are two, three key objectives. Quick entry, quick exit, fast sales, cost of borrowing is high, premiums are very high. You heard in the morning, everybody was asking the government to reconsider premiums, especially in the Mumbai city. With that in perspective, how can developers be able to cater to their needs of quick exits, as well as cater to ensuring this asset class is also being delivered? I'm opening it to all three of you, and then Ashank, I'd like your view also. Are there any models which developers could adapt, or you could come with creative ideas which would help them to start thinking, okay, maybe the next 3 towers, I'll make 1 tower a student housing, or a co-living, or a senior living. What would enable them to do that?
Oh, interesting question. Thanks for asking that. Since we have done that, I can tell with confidence that the developers should look at it. There is both opportunities that is available. You're looking at a quick exit. There are enough fractional ownership platforms that is available where you can get an exit. You can also do the unit sales directly. And you have operators like us who are willing to underwrite the rentals on those towers if it's in the right location. That gives you a great advantage in terms of, like Adarsh said, it is something that you can always sell at least 15 to 20% higher than the market rate because there are rental guarantees that are coming from the operators like us. Secondly, I think it's also a myth that the rental housing, basically the yields are much lower. Now, that's typically from an end user point of view, the yields on a rental house, when you buy a house and then give it on a lease, the yields are lower, there is no doubt. But from a developer point of view, if you look at the rental yields on the cost of development, it is closer to the commercial yields. It'll at least work out to be 7 to 9 or 7 to 8% of yields on that, depending on what is the residential or the land price at which you're picking up that property. So from that point of view, it is the developer's choice whether they want to sell. This particular product gives you an opportunity to sell at 10-15% higher than the market. Two, you can also hold to the asset, like Ashank was saying, that see through it for some time, you only get the appreciation on the asset. And at the same time, there are operators like us who are willing to underwrite. So you can convert that into LRDs so that there is no problem of cost of fund as well, except during the construction phase.
Adarsh, your views?
I think as alternate assets, having elder care or senior living as part of a larger community, I think primarily the monetization cycle comes down because you get to attract 3 sets of customers, right? The parents, the in-laws, and the working couple. The second thing is the layer of services that we offer, medical, food, concierge, events, housekeeping. We then open it out to the whole community. And whenever Modi ji's vision of a 3 trillion, 5 trillion, whatever economy is achieved, I don't think people are going to work for us at 15, 20,000, right? So this 1:1 ratio of 1 cook, 1 maid, 1 driver, 1 this thing for a house, that's not going to be possible. So professional companies like ours that would operate communities is probably going to become the norm. And we're going to be actually much cheaper than managing one's own house. So it works out both from a liquidation of the project point of view. So you increase the IRR and the NPVs. You make a price premium because having parents near you is an emotion. And then you add a service layer beyond the real estate layer of a clubhouse and a home. So that's how it would integrate.
Suresh?
Yeah, I think just want to add and top it up. I think a lot of us don't realize today Outer Ring Road, probably commercial real estate goes at about 90, 80, 90, 100 rupees a square feet in Bangalore. But co-living, today we have evidence that these are running at about 120 rupees a square feet. So I think developers have not dwelled deep into it. I think we need to work closely with them. Of course, patient capital is required. Of course, this is the top line. There is a little bit of occupancy risk. There is a little bit of servicing costs. But still, 90 rupees per square feet is something which is achievable, and we have demonstrated that consistently over 3 years. That is one point. Second point is that I think everybody talks about 3% yield on residential. How does suddenly it become double digit? I think it's got to do with the area. First, the denominator changes, and suddenly you realize that what that individual wants, that's where the shared economy kicks in. What they want is private bedroom and a private toilet, and they're willing to share everything else, right? And they have common requirements which are shared in common areas. So suddenly the per person consumption, now we have looked at it very, very deeply, is for a couple is about 267 square feet, right? And that's the magical number. And whereas, you probably load all the puja room and the servant room and the living room and, the balconies and et cetera, and suddenly, a yield that can be 9% becomes 3%. So I think the denominator has to change, and that's the way we have started looking at it, and which is why institutional capital developers have all started working with us.
Interesting.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think purpose-built rental housing is very different. The design will determine quite a bit in terms of what goes into the yield calculations. I also think what Adarsh was saying and pointing towards, commodity real estate cannot last forever. There's only a certain amount of demand you will see in the masses of India where you can sell the same product again and again. Everybody wants to create some differentiation, and services are going to be that differentiation going forward. From a design and public areas and spaces, amenities standpoint, every developer is providing the same clubhouse, the same swimming pool, the same amenities, etc., etc. So what is it that you can differentiate to be able to achieve that higher price? Whether it's a segment focused, whether it's a service focused, and there are different models to that effect where you can take out some of the chips off the table and through a sales program. But from a design standpoint, ensure that the second tower or the third tower have their separate access, have their separate amenities, go vertical on the amenities if required, right? And be able to design and create these assets for yourself in the longer run. Because that's when the price appreciation will come in, that's when the availability of future demand will get generated. And it's important to do this at scale and with the right operators, because it's very hard to be able to do it on a subscale basis on a one-off project standpoint, because the monetization of that then in the future becomes very difficult also.
Interesting. Yeah, so I think the outcome is out clear. I mean, this is a new age model. It is adaptable. It's very much executable. And there is exit models available in irrespective cases. I mean, if you plan a residential building, you could also plan a senior living or a student housing, and there are exits available in a similar manner and at a premium as well. Is that what we are gathering from here? We have 2.5 minutes before lunch. I would let the audience go with some gossip. Senior living, student housing, co-living. Any gossips or any trends, social life?
Obviously, it's a difficult market to tackle, right? I mean, you're looking at 21 to 30-year-olds. First time they have money in their hands. Obviously, they want to show off that they are the most powerful. So there are challenges. So people who want to jump into the business, be cautious. There are experts who have done that. Got scars on their faces and created controls and checks and balances. So I think that's, of course, the gossip that he wanted is, as soon as somebody is pregnant, we know that they're going to check out. That's the way we monitor our, checkout. So we know that, in our communities, we have about 18,000 people living in our communities in about 120 buildings. They don't like kids running around, right? I mean, that's the reality. 21 to 29, 30-year-olds don't like kids running around in the corridor. I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons that they don't want to live in society. So that's...
Others?
So, Suresh, I'm going to take a cue of what you said. So Florida is the largest congregation of elders in the world, right? Can any of you guess what's the #1 selling over-the-counter drug in Florida? Viagra. So don't be under the illusion that elders are, not having fun in the traditional sense.
Lastly, Jay, you have a hell of a problem with students.
Yes, I think fun apart, what we have at least realized is that this generation is something that it doesn't work out if you try to police them too much. The idea is to, of course, the reason why they're coming to our place is that they want their freedom. And the Constitution provides that freedom, right? They're 21 and they're anything legal, they should be allowed to do, and there is no reason for us to, moral police on them. So that's something that we try and avoid. However, we need to have some house rules, which is something that we also have in our societies or apartments. As long as they're given that freedom, they're happy to stay in the place. And the most important reason why we have our average stay of our customers in co-living is about 8 to 9 months. And the reason why they have that kind of a stickiness is because of the community that gets created around them and the kind of relationships that happen. Also, in today's world, it is so important to pull them outside their mobile phones, come outside the rooms and meet the neighbor. And only when you meet the neighbor, the bonding happens. And when the bonding happens, that creates stickiness to the place. So it is our endeavor that the easiest thing is to create the product and service, but the tougher thing is to create the community. And if we get the community thing right, then we have a good long-term stay from our customers.
Just on a serious note, developers, you're all free of this services. Huh? They underwrite and they undertake the lease management of that part. Great. With that, we put an end to this panel. Thank you very much, delegates. I really enjoyed having this conversation with you all.
Thank you very much. Before you leave, I have a few announcements to make. We would request your presence for another couple of minutes. Starting with, may I request Rajesh Doshi, sir, to please join us on stage and present Mr. Ashank Kothari with our fondest token of appreciation.